And I don't know if you may have heard about this or not, but it's Jerry Seinfeld talking about comedy. Have you watched this yet?
I have seen that he made a statement about work. Yeah.
So I think this clip is a continuation, or maybe this is where the actual statement came from. So let's see here.
Nothing really affects comedy. People always need it. They need it so badly, and they don't get it. It used to be you would go home at the end of the day. Most people would go, oh, Cheers is on. Oh, MASH is on. Oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on. All in the Family's on. You just
is it bad that I remember every single one of those?
Oh, me too. Those are,
and watching them on TV. Oh my god, I remember every single one of those shows.
Yep.
Some of them were a bit before my time, but they were still running reruns on syndication when I was little. So anyway,
expected there'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people.
Mm-hmm. So there's quite a few comedies I still like that I don't think necessarily shy away from. I mean, a lot of it's animated though. Like you look at like South Park and some of these other things, they don't care about offending people really. But the classic sitcoms in that sense, I just don't think that, like, I'm going to use this term and you're probably going to hate it, but I don't think a lot of the modern audience, especially like the Gen Z audience, watches TV the same way that we used to watch TV. Like, I don't think they view it the same way we do. They consume media very differently. Like the idea of going home and sitting around the TV and watching something at 8:00 at night, I don't think that exists anymore for most younger viewers.
Well, and that ties into what I said about the change in my own viewing habits. It's very rare for me to watch, even on demand, a full TV show from beginning to end that I know I liked from the past. You know, so I think that the entertainment sphere has changed, that people consume it very differently. I'm consuming it differently, so I can understand that they would. And yeah, so those days, unfortunately, are gone. It'd be nice to have a common thing to come home to unwind to, whatever that was. But I think those days are gone.
Now, everything new that anybody gives a shit about either all drops at once or it drops at 3:00 in the morning on Amazon, you know, or it gets spoiled before you even wake up. Like the show is on and then already some Twitter account, some Instagram account somewhere is posting like, this happened at the end of the episode. Can you believe this character came back? So you can't even do reviews on YouTube anymore like you used to because it just doesn't exist. So that's just changing from like 2014 that was 10 years ago. So when he's mentioning a lot of these older shows that I remember watching when I was growing up, we had a long run of destination shows that people watched. And I feel like that change happened very recently. Like I would say probably just before COVID. I think right around the time the streaming places boomed, when we went from having Netflix to everything having a streaming service, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Nickelodeon, everything had a streaming service. I feel like that was the end of destination television.
Well, yeah, and COVID kind of accelerated that, you know, because got to get a lot of content into people's hands because they're at home, and you got to, you know, build up the big bubble. And
so let's see what else he has to say here. I want to get as much of his content out before I make my comments on all these the PC stuff he's talking about.
When you write a script and it goes into 4 or 5 different hands, committees, groups, here's our thought about this joke. Well, that's the end of your comedy. They move the gates, like in the scheme. Yeah. Culture, the gates are moving. Your job is to be agile and clever enough that wherever they put the gates, I'm going to make the gate.
Okay, so you probably have a lot of opinions on this, and I'm glad that you're here because I was going to watch this clip anyway, but I thought it was just going to be me. So people are just going to hear my thoughts on it. Maybe that's all they give a shit about. I don't know. Anyway, so there's still a lot of comedy that I enjoy, but I realize that I'm probably aged out of the target demographic of a lot of TV shows that are out now. You know, I'll be 50 very soon, and I realize that is the market that most media doesn't care about anymore. Like our age group, forget it.
Yeah.
Like there's no interest in that whatsoever. So I would say it's not just the idea of like politically correct humor. I think it's just this idea that the culture has shifted and people are living longer. So a lot of these comedians are still in the industry working well beyond the years of people prior, go back 2 or 3 decades. They're still in the industry. They're still working. And even though he might be, because he's in the industry, I'm not going to refute that he's experienced this. Obviously, he's probably dealt with this before. But I will say that I think it's also the fact that it's just a change in the taste of the audience that the companies are trying to appease to. And I don't think they even know 100% what they're doing. Like, I don't think that every studio, because if that's the case, we'd have a lot more home runs, and we just don't. We just don't have a lot of more home runs. I think we're in a weird space where it's not just the idea of politically correct. I think we're in a space where the viewing habits of how comedy works. I'm just going to blame TikTok for everything. I think just TikTok and like online consumable content, like these little reels and things or whatever, I think it's kind of ruined the generation of humor that a lot of these comedians came from.
I
Would
agree.
you say that's fair?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I agree with that because, again, it is the quick hit, the ability to watch something literally. You have, imagine this, in the entertainment from our youth, you didn't have a chance where you had 2 minutes. You could pick up something and like a TV show because it wouldn't be on when you had those 2 minutes to spare. Now you can't. All right. So you literally, between doing task 1 and task 2, I've got 2 extra minutes. Boom, on the phone, watch a reel or something. And so you got something you can consume. We could never have done that.
You end up in a TikTok hole is what they call it. Like, you're just scrolling endlessly through, videos of people throwing. Like, the new thing is like going into grocery stores and like pushing people's cart out of the way and stuff like that. That's the humor that people are consuming now. And older comedians are too cerebral for that. That humor is so juvenile that I don't think, like, look at someone like Chris Farley. Like, Chris Farley, and people in the chat may not know this reference, but you have people like Chris Farley who they were basically physical comedians. They did dumb stuff. They looked funny doing it, and it made it funny because of not only the stuff they were doing, but the way they looked doing it. But there was like a level of intelligence behind it that it seemed calculated. Whereas today you have these people going out and pranking people, I guess, in public and stuff. And how do you compete with that? How does someone in the industry who's an actual comedian, how do they compete with that and make a career off of it anymore? It feels almost impossible. So even though he's talking about the PC stuff, because Maestro said here, I'd say streaming is more to blame than leftist PC stuff than what he's talking about. I think that it's just I'm just going to be honest. I think it's just the viewing habits of the public and the culture shift. That's what I think it is. Well, I don't think that, because comedy can be there's a lot of comedians that are supposedly like right-wing conservative comedians that have very successful careers doing it. So,
well, and they're going after a different audience as well. There's still an audience for the older comedians. You can still see comedy shows where, large spaces are, full of people watching a comedian. Mm-hmm. Generally, they tend to be a little older. Not a lot of Zoomers probably, who knows. But I think tastes have changed. The way we consume has changed. I think there's still space for both. I think there are plenty of us, anybody from 50 and older, who can appreciate the history of comedy, from years gone by. We're the type of people who could go to a show. I mean, if you had a favorite comedian and they were coming to a club nearby you, or even a large auditorium or something, you might go to it. Who knows? A lot of people might not, though. People who are, constantly on their phone and maybe not interested in that type of thing said, I got all the humor I want right in my hand.
So I don't know. I don't totally agree that I think everything is the fault of like leftist PC stuff. But I think that comedy, a lot of comedians are some of the most tortured people. Their comedy comes from like a place of like real emotion, real hurt. And I've known a lot of comedians that I interact with on social media who live in LA and they do all the comedy clubs or whatever. They're people that deal with actual like trauma in their life, and they translate that through their comedy, and so they take it very seriously. But Crazy Cat here says Joe Rogan and podcasting ruin comedy. Oh no, we're partaking in the cancellation of comedy. I feel so bad
It's
about
our
it.
fault.
It's our fault.